So on the push stick booklet, we finished step 5, drilling holes with the drill press. The next step is step 6, straight cuts. Now we could do them on the bandsaw. Any straight cuts can be done on the bandsaw, but we typically don't do them because there's usually a backed up with people. We only have 2 of them, and everybody needs to cut them for cut their blanks out. So if you finish your hole, you're gonna come over. We can do straight cuts on this as well, and definitely we do our curve cuts on here. So have to do the curve cuts here. You, for your push stick, will be doing your straight cuts on this as well. Okay, so we're going to skip step 6 in the booklet, and we're going to step 7, which is the scroll saw. Okay, so you've got your lines drawn on here, on here, and you're going to be ready to cut. The first cut you're going to make would be on. So I'll draw my quick push stick here. So my push stick is going to have my notch right here. Okay, and again, you don't want to make it too big. Okay, you want to have a sharp pencil. A thin line is much easier to follow. Okay, and then I'm going to be cutting out my curve here. Okay, so for me, my curve is going to be like this, and then I'm making, I don't know, I'll make a curve this way here. Okay, so first thing is, what am I going to cut out first? Well, always do your first cuts first. So we'll talk about, before we set up the bandsaw, we'll talk about the cuts we're going to be doing. You can prep this for yourself. Okay, so straight cuts first. So that means you're going to make your cuts here and here. Okay, doesn't matter which one you do first, but you will cut in. The good thing about the scroll saw is it's actually a blade that is held, pinched top and bottom, and it moves up and down. So the bandsaw moves around, and you never back up on it because the scroll saw is pinched top and bottom, and the 2 arms hold it and move up and down. If you remember in grade 6, we used the coping saw to cut your bodies out for your airplanes. Well, this is like an automatic coping saw. So on the coping saw, we clamped it down in there, and we moved our piece of wood back and forth. This moves for us, and we just have to put our wood, feed our wood into it. So first cuts we're going to make is 1 and 2 here on the. So you can even writing that down, labeling it. If you do this ahead of time, it'll speed things up. So I'll see what you're thinking. And we do straight cuts first. So we would come in here in the first cut, back out. Second cut would come in here. And it's fine to back up. Backing up though, leave it running, it's better, especially on a curve, because it'll help it to move out easier. If I shut it off and try to back up, it can snag and catch. Okay, so do my straight cuts first. Then I'd look at this, and whatever my most gentle outside cut is, would be the next one I'd want to do. So I'd want to do this one next, so 3 would be right there. And then 4 and 5 up here. Okay, and then the last one I would do is 6. And the reason I'm doing this one last is because it's an inside curve. Okay, typically as I'm cutting, so what I want to do here is, this blade is set up and it wants to cut straight ahead. So I'm going to put, this is my blade, I want to line my piece of wood up in front of the blade so the blade will cut down it. If I line it up like this, my blade's going to want to cut that way, and I'm going to be off the line. So I always want to keep, I can't adjust the blade or where it's moving, I can only adjust my piece of wood. I want to keep the piece of wood, the line on my piece of wood in front of the blade, so as it cuts, it will cut through here. The blade might not be perfectly straight, it might cut a little bit of an angle, maybe somebody ahead of you twisted it and warped it a little bit. If it does want to cut a little bit that way, as it starts to cut, watch what it's doing and move your piece of wood to be in front of the blade. So I cut in, back up, and I turn around, I would cut in this way, and that piece should fall out. And then the next thing I'm going to do is cut this curve, cut my 2 curves here, and the last one I'm going to cut here. Because typically as I'm cutting, what happens is that the blade wants to cut straight, and as I'm making a turn, I usually won't turn sharp enough. So if I make a mistake here as I'm cutting down this way and I come off the line, I'm going to come off the line over here. I'm getting rid of this anyway, so I just back up a bit, turn it, and then keep going. Okay. On this one, if I make a mistake, I'm usually not going to turn fast enough, and that means I'm out into the wood that I'm going to be keeping, so that's why we leave this to last. Get your practice on your straight cuts first, then outside curves, and then your inside curve. And if I had a curve like this, and it came down, and it was maybe, I might want to put a, or let's say my curve went like this, it came down like this, and then kind of came up sharper, snap my blue lead, and came up sharper like that. And that's a good spot right there, because that's sharp, a bit sharper curve right there, to do a relief cut. So before I cut this number 6 cut, I would make a relief cut right here, and then that way this would be my 6th cut, and 7 would be this cut. And so what happens is I cut into the line here, back out, and then when I'm cutting down here, when I get to here, instead of having to make a really sharp turn in the wood, when I get to there, this piece falls out, and I can either come in from this side or I can keep going up that side, but it allows my blade to be able to turn. Okay, so if you've got your lines all drawn out on it, then I can see what you're planning to cut. Always straight cuts, then outside cuts, then inside cuts, all labeled up. We're ready to come to here. You've got your spotter here. Again, marks on the floor there, so that you and your spotter should be the only ones in here. You're ready to start setting this up. So this is the scroll saw. This is number 2. It's got on here. It's also got on the side right here. And if you've got your fingers around this, you should have it unplugged. But you normally won't have your fingers around the blade. But we've got to set it up. So first thing we're going to do is coming up to it, make sure it's off, which it is right now, and unplugged, and then we're going to tension the blade. So we flick this right up here. This white guy here is the tensioner. So the blade right now is loose, okay? And you can see it's nice and loose. And as I lift this up, it tightens it up. You can actually hear it getting tighter. Okay, so there we go. Nice. You thought this wasn't, you thought this was a shop class, not music class, but we're playing a little bit of music here. It's about as musical as we get. Okay, so that is tensioned up. That is nice and tight. Next thing we want to do is we want to set the height for this. Just like the bandsaw, we're going to use the same height. Now this is different than you might read in some videos, and some people do say that you should have these hold down arms actually touching the wood and holding it down. I disagree, and I'll explain why in a little bit and show you. But for in this class, contrary to the videos you watched previously, you are going to set this up at 1/4 inch. So the way we adjust this is, this should be basically all the way down right there. Okay, and so what we do is we loosen this guy right here, loosen that, and now this will move around. The easiest way to do this is to bring your wood underneath there, use your right hand to kind of hold this, and this will go ahead and back, so it can kind of rock that way. So you do want to kind of make sure you're keeping it flat. You don't really want it to be down too much here. Okay, we're holding that flat. Flat front to back or level with your piece of wood, about that 1/4 inch. I can't get my finger underneath that. Okay, I want to keep this can actually go side to side. Obviously it would be bad for the blade to be hitting that, so kind of keep these hold down arms in the middle there, level here, and then we tighten this up. Okay, so we snug that up like that, and then it should stay in place. Now if you find that when you tighten this up, this gets loose, then sometimes if you loosen this off too much, then this guy right here, this hexagon bolt that's sticking through with the hole in it that pinches this, can slide out of its little groove that it's supposed to be in, and I might tighten this down, but this still moves around and is still loose. And what's going on is this is in the wrong spot. So if that happens to you, you can come and see me, but you just loosen it off and move this a little bit, and now it slips into the groove it's supposed to, and it will tighten down properly. Okay? If you don't unloosen this too much, then you usually won't have that happen to you. Okay? But the person ahead of you might have done that. If they didn't follow this video carefully. There we go, in the middle, we're level here, tightening it up. It tightened well. Make sure that this still is in the middle. There we go. Now be careful, because there is these feet here. The bottom of the shoe is here, and then this guard on the front that comes up, there's a bit of a difference. So we're not referencing off this, we're referencing off the bottom of the hold down arms right here. There we go. So 1/4 inch up, it's not catching, I can get in underneath there, it looks good. It is tight. The only thing I need to do is adjust my blower right here. The blower is not critical, but as the saw goes up and down and cuts, there will be some sawdust happening that can collect on the line here in front, and you might not be able to see. So we bring this guy here, we kind of turn it. You should have it pointing at the back of the blade, kind of to the edge. It's not touching the blade. There we go. That should be decently close, and it doesn't be perfect right there. That should be enough to keep it cleared out. So now you're ready to get to cut. You've got it all set up. You would come, Mr. Blakely, I'm ready to go on the scroll saw. Can you come and watch me cut? Okay, absolutely. So I'll come over, and we're gonna be, and I'll be here to watch you make your first cut. So you're ready to cut. I'm gonna come up. You got your wood. We want to keep our hands out of here. The danger zone on the scroll saw is nice, bigger than a softball. The danger zone on this is about the size of a toonie. Okay, so we don't want to have our hands inside the guard. As long as our hands are outside the guard, we can get much closer. That's fine. Okay, we just want to make sure that we're not inside. Never put your finger in here. Don't reach underneath. Okay, so first cut I'm going to make here is this one. So I'm going to put this on here, and I've got it all set up here. You've set this up. Your spotters watched you, helped you out with it. I come along and check it. It looks good. So I tell you you're ready to cut. Our speed should be, this arrow should be pointing at about 1 o'clock up here. You really shouldn't have to touch that. I'll adjust it if you're cutting different, but for 3/8 inch, that's plenty of speed. We flick the switch up to on. Oops, sorry, before we do that, we should plug it in. Then we plug it in here. There we go. And if we flick the switch to on, nothing happens. Well, that's because we have the foot pedal down here. It's a safety, and that should be out here. So move it out wherever it's comfortable for you. You can use left foot, right foot, whatever you prefer. Move it somewhere where it's comfortable. Okay? And it won't start until you step on this. When I do, it starts up. So quiet machine, but we would be wearing hearing protection if we're using this normally because of the extraction is hooked to it. The extraction will be running and other machines and stuff like that. So normally we'd wear that. I don't have it on for right now because it isn't that loud. So I don't want to have my hands in here. Now I am only cutting in to there, so I could hold my hand here and cut and not get it in the way, but get in the habit of holding it off to the side and feeding it in like this. Okay, so again, I want that line straight in front of the blade, and then I'm going to be cutting in. And I don't want to go too fast, so I want to go nice and slow. Slow gives me more control, gives me a better cut. I can watch what happens. If I start to get off the line, I would turn sideways to stop. I could back up if I needed to, turn a little bit, and then come ahead. Okay, going ahead. And again, you see I'm not going very fast. There we go, I hit the end. I'm backing out. Keep it running when you back up. It tends to snag less as I'm doing that. And then I turn around, now I'm going to come in from the front. Okay. In this case, I can put my hand to the side and feed it in, or I could clamp underneath this and feed it in that way. Either way. Okay, maybe I'll do it this way so you can see a little easier. I'm coming in. So not going too fast. Okay. I'm coming in. I'm almost getting, so I'm turning a little bit because I'm starting to get off the line a bit. As I get close to the other line that I made, I want to slow right down because when I come to that, it's going to want to jump ahead. And if I'm pushing as I go, it will jump through and it'll cut a notch on the other side. It doesn't matter for your push stick, but it's a good idea to not to do that. Okay? If your foot comes off, it'll stop. I've got a piece of wood in there. I never want to reach in there, so I use my this and I push that piece of wood on through out where it's going to be safe to grab it, reach around, and small pieces can get thrown right in the garbage. Okay? You don't want to have a whole lot of wood sitting behind here. If you are keeping these pieces, you could have them, but push them nice and clear in the back. You don't want them sitting right here where I'm cutting and they can get snagged on other things. If you are keeping them, put them back here out of the way. So I've made that. Now we're coming to our sideways cuts. Okay. On a sideways cut, the blade's going to be coming in. I put it in front, and I'm going to line that up with where I want the blade to go. And as I'm coming down, the blade is, as I'm pushing it through, the blade's going to be cutting straight. My line curves, so I'm going to have to adjust a little bit as I go to make sure that I stay on the line. So I'm going to be turning gently as I go to make sure I keep my line in front of the blade to get cut. Now, because the teeth cut on the teeth are on the front of the blade, same as a bandsaw, it's just as narrower. The teeth are in the front of the blade. As I cut into a piece of wood with the teeth, they want to cut straight. If I make a turn, the teeth now have to kind of cut sideways. They'll do that, but on the back side here, where my finger is, the back edge of the blade will hit the other side and it's not cutting, and that will create some friction. I'm going to want to lift the piece of wood. So the reason I say to not have your hold down arms holding this down is that if I start to go too fast, especially on a curve is where it typically tends to happen. If I start to go too fast on a curve, the blade hasn't got time to clear itself out, the back is rubbing, and it'll start to jump. Okay? And you'll start to get a tap, 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 tap noise happening. And that's a really good way the machine is telling you, slow down a bit, you're going too fast for the blade. I'm not able to cut and clear myself out. Give me a minute. Okay? If the hold down arms are holding that down, you won't hear that, and you might still kind of try to cut, you might still be forcing it, and then the next thing you know, you snap the blade. So it gives you a little bit of an indication if you're going too fast and to slow down if you lose the hold down arms up. So that's the big reason why I say to do that. And so what I'm going to do, so to cut this, I'll give you an example. So I'm cutting, and when we're cutting, we do hold some gentle pressure down. So I've lined that line up. I'm cutting through here. And I'm starting to get off the line right there. Okay, so stop, back up a little bit, turn a bit more, and then start again. And there we go, I'm nice on the edge of the line, back again. Okay, and as I go, slow right down on the turns. Again, a nice thin line is going to be easier to follow. There's a little groove in the wood, so my line's not straight there. And come on. Now, if I try to go too fast, what will happen is this. You'll hear a noise like this. Okay? I'll start slapping like that. So you see, I just let go to exaggerate it. Okay? But if that happens, slow down. If you weren't holding down tightly, it will jump on you too. So maybe just a little more downward pressure on your fingers, but slow down. It's an indication you're going too slow or too fast. Okay. And again, I know what I'm doing here, but you notice I'm not rushing because I want to take my time. I'll do a much better cut if I go long. Okay? If I take my time and go slow. Fingers should not be in front of that where I'm going to be cutting. I'm getting off the line a little bit, so I slow down, turn it a bit more. There we go. As I get to coming out here, as I finish this cut off, I get to right there, okay, and that piece of wood falls loose. But on this, well, I guess you didn't do too bad a job. Sometimes you'll find where you get to the edge and there's a little lip right there. There's a tiny bit of a one. So instead of doing what I did right there, what you want to do is you want to kind of finish the cut. So I get to here the piece is loose. Keep on going and go through the piece of wood and it'll smooth it right out. And you can always file that down afterwards, it's not a problem. Okay, but that's a really nice smooth cut because I took my time. You'll probably notice on your cuts they're not quite as smooth as that because you're rushing a little bit. Go nice and slow. The slower you go, the easier it is. And especially when you're doing your last cut here, on this one, on the inside curve, you want to go slow so you don't make mistakes and get out where you're going to mess it up. I'll show you what a relief cut looks like. So again, we'll clear out this piece of wood. Don't reach in with your fingers. Use your push stick to push it out. Grab it and toss it. Our next cuts I would make would be the 4 and 5 out here. 6 is this one. So relief cut, I just come here. This one I can go a little faster if I want. I'm just going straight in, doesn't really matter. Okay, and I go to the end of, just kiss the line where I was coming down to. And now when I cut in, I can cut into here. That piece will fall out. I'll actually cut this one just to show you what it looks like. So, cutting here. I come in, I'm holding it down, my hands are away. Oops, and I'm off the line a little bit, so I can back up, adjust it. Normally when you're using it, you'll be standing straight in front. I'm kind of standing off to the side so you can see it easier. Makes it more difficult to cut. You see me coming in, I got 2 lines there, I'm following the outside one. And as I come around, there we go, that piece fell out. So that's what a relief cut does. It allows you to get rid of that. Okay. Clear that piece out of there. Not reaching in with my hands. Okay, boom. And now I could either cut from this side here and cut around, or I could turn it around and cut through this way. I'm probably going to do that because it's fairly sharp there, so it's better coming from this side. When you're making cuts, you can go either like this. So I could cut this way and around, or I could cut like this and feed it this way. Okay, so it can come from either side on the cuts. If your hands are like this, they're behind the blade, so you're going to be a little safer. It's fine to do that, but as long as you keep your hands away from the front of the blade, it's no problem with you to go like this and like that. Okay, in that way. Up to you. When you're finished with your cuts, hey, make sure you cleaned up everything. Sorry, before you even clean it up. When you're finished with your cuts and you're done with the machine, you're going to take the tension off it. So you're going to, or turn it off first here. Okay, take the tension off there. We want the blade to be loose when we're not using it. Okay, and again, unplug it before you get your hands in around the blade. So loosen it off here. You won't have to put your hands in around the blade. Loosen this off and drop this down. So loosen that and drop it down so it's almost touching the table. Give it a little snug. There we go. Okay, so you complete it. Good idea to push this back in under there. And then if it needs to be cleaned up at all, you can, but you've got your push stick that you created. Yours will be finished, not half like mine. And with that, you now know how to use the bandsaw, the drill press, the scroll saw, which are the main tools we use here in the shop. And with those, you can do a ton of woodworking. The only other thing I would recommend to you now, well, now your next step would be to take and file. You can file this down. Please show this to me before you file it, though, so I can see your what your cuts were like. Once you file it, it's harder for me to see those, so I like to see them. You're not expected to be a perfection on your first time doing this. You're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. But I like to see how you did it, and usually I can see where you improved as you went. And then the next step would be then filing it down. So you can grab a file, smooth down those edges, smooth out any maybe imperfections you made or mistakes you made, smooth those out, and the final step would be taking some sandpaper over top of it. Okay. If you're going to use machines to finish this off, the belt disc sander would be a really good one to use, okay? Because it will smooth things down, but it does remove a lot of materials quickly. But that is one of the things belt disc sander is something you're going to use after you've used these machines. You can clean up your cuts with those as well. Okay, and that's the push stick.